everybody. This is Laura Click with Blue Kite Marketing, and I am over the moon to have Pam Slim here today. For those of you that don't know Pam, she is the author of the blog and the book, Escape from Cubicle Nation. And Pam and I did some consulting with Pam a couple years ago. So she has been instrumental in my journey to becoming a full-time entrepreneur. And I just thought it was very fitting to have her on the blog this week to talk about entrepreneurship, the escape, and what a beautiful thing that is, and what she does to help entrepreneurs realize their dreams. So, Pam, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm just so excited for you and so proud of you, and I could think of no better place to be. Seriously, I'm so excited at seeing what you've done.
Thanks, Pam. I bet that's probably one of the favorite things about your job is that getting those emails and the calls from people saying, "I did it! I finally quit my job."
There's nothing better. Of somebody who really worked the plan like you did and made it happen. And it's a huge transition psychologically and actually on the business side as well. So that is one of the exciting parts. Now, of course, what happens next is also part of the journey.
Yes, yes. We'll talk about that in a minute. So talk to me about how you got started working with this sect of people, with entrepreneurs. I mean, before you did this, you were a corporate consultant, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? So
that's correct.
So how did you make the transition to helping entrepreneurs take the leap?
Well, I've been self-employed going on 16 years. August 15th will be 16 years. And so I left my corporate job that was at a large financial services company. And for the record, I really enjoyed most of my time there. I know with the brand Escape from Cubicle Nation, many people think I'm totally anti-corporate, but I actually had a really enjoyable career in corporate. We had a merger right before I left, and I turned 30 and realized that I was really ready for something different. I wanted to do something different, and I really wasn't sure what that was. So I quit my job without a plan, which, as you know, I never recommend to my clients, but it was 1996, and it was a real healthy time in the economy. I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, which was a very growing economic sector. And so I started just kind of almost by accident going to my prior manager who went to Hewlett-Packard and asking if she needed a little bit of help. And that's where I first started working as a consultant on a project on the Worldwide Management Development Curriculum. And once I started, it was just like this light went off in my head. I loved the work that I did. Angels sang. It really was actually quite profound because I had always loved to do my work. That was never a question. I just loved having the freedom and the flexibility to do things my way. And one thing I didn't realize as well, which I think is really important for people to think about, is for 10 years, basically from the age 20 to 30, I had been the volunteer executive director for a nonprofit organization that taught martial arts. I'm a martial artist. We had a whole youth program. I wrote grants. We did performances. I had a very active, busy life in my 20s. And in my mind, I had not equated that experience with being something that could prepare me to be an entrepreneur. And so what was really a light bulb for me is when I realized that, wait a minute, I've been making things happen. I've been growing programs. I've been raising money. And even though I was a volunteer for a nonprofit, those skills really came in handy when it came to building a business. And so for people that might be volunteers in church, for people that have outside hobbies and interests, that is something to really take into consideration, that can really help in your journey. So for me, I basically spent 10 years crisscrossing the United States, Europe, working in lots of different companies, and I loved it. And what I began to find in terms of trends, regardless of what the industry was or what the nature of the size of the company, even in places that were voted best place to work and that were considered to be the very best companies in the world, there was always a sector of people who would pull me aside and say, like, how did you do it? How did you leave? And how did you escape? And what was a bit perplexing to me is that at that time, in 2005, which is when I started my Escape from Cubicle Nation blog, there was so much information about starting a business. Great, effective information, fantastic books. And so I thought, what is it that is different for people who are in corporate jobs where some of that information they really can't relate to, even though all the steps for starting a business is readily accessible for free on the internet or also in really good books. And what I realized in having these conversations is that the psychological change of really moving from a pretty significant social status, idea of self when you're working in a corporate job, in academia, in government. It's all pretty similar, where your identity is very much tied with that particular structure. So when you go out on your own, it's not just the act of taking the steps to build a business. It's also really reinventing who you are and what's important to you. And also, really importantly, the connections you have with your loved ones and your community and your family and friends also can change. And sometimes people can be threatened by it. Sometimes people don't understand it. They think you're making a huge mistake by leaving a safe, corporate job. And all of that can be really difficult. So that's when I decided to start a blog, which was Escaping Cubicle Nation in 2005, basically writing about these things, writing directly to the audience of people who are in this particular bridge of knowing that they want to start a business, having an idea, and really wanting to walk through the process of getting through where they build their side business to the point where they can quit. And that's just, that period of time has always really fascinated me. So that's really what I focused on, and I've done for the last 6 years, and was actually quite surprised at the growth of my blog and just my business in general.
Yeah. What's been really fascinating to me is that even just in the last week, when I've told people, finally kind of came out, so to speak, and told people, so I have this thing and I'm quitting. And you're right. It's been interesting, even people from my day job coming up to me and going, and jealousy is maybe the wrong word, but it was, I wish I could do that. I want to do that. I wish, I want to, do X, Y, Z. And it was just really surprising and almost sad to me, because there are all these people that I've come across that, aren't living out their dreams. They're, doing their day job because they feel it's safe, it's right, it's what they're supposed to be doing. So why do you think so many people feel trapped in their job? Why do so many people put those barriers between themselves and their dreams?
I think because it's frightening. It's frightening to make a big change. It can be, it can feel uncomfortable. There is so much investment often that we make in a particular career track, where you might have gotten an education and specialty in a particular field. You've spent years sometimes building relationships with people. There is a social status and a comfort that's related to knowing where you fit within a system. And I think as human beings in general, we're kind of wired to like to have that comfort of knowing where we fit, right? We're all connected to each other in communities. People often feel the best where they are connected and they know where they fit and they're making a contribution. So psychologically, when you're thinking of shifting, even if it's in a positive direction, in an area where you really have dreams to go to, it often means leaving behind things that can feel very important to you, like knowing where you fit in the world, like being recognized for your expertise, like having people understand how effective you are, in your job. And I don't think you can underestimate that. My view, as you know, because we work together, is actually not to make a huge dramatic shift. If anybody's ever watched the movie Jerry Maguire with Tom Cruise, if you haven't, you must watch it this weekend. It's a fantastic movie.
Yes, it is.
In the movie, he makes a very melodramatic speech about quitting, and he says, I'm going to take the goldfish.
Right.
And of course, there's not a very good response when he gives that speech to leaving his job. And most people think about an exit that's that dramatic. I have a totally opposite approach of taking tiny little steps, sometimes for years, to work slowly on making that transition. And what starts to happen as you begin to work on things in a small way, you begin to feel a little bit different. You ease into a new role. And then on the business side, when you're actually ready, when you have paying clients, when you have the business infrastructure in place, when you have a reasonable idea that you can actually make a living that would be equivalent or on the path to equivalent of what you've made as an employee, then it's really time to leave. And so that generally for me is, the way to work with it. And I have great empathy for how scary it can be. The other thing that's important is to realize is that everybody comes within a certain family system and structure of stories. And almost everybody I talk to has some Uncle Jed, right, who totally destroyed his family way back in the day by having this crazy business idea. In almost every family, no matter the cultural background or even country, there's usually somebody who has kind of a negative story in the family. If they were trying to pursue their dreams, or they were an artist and ended up, destroying their lives. And sometimes those stories can be very powerful within family systems. There can be a lot of resistance often, to doing things like that. So one of the things that's really important on the journey as well is to look for evidence out there of people who actually have done things successfully, to study business models, and to begin to create a circle outside of your normal environment of your corporate or academic or government job, of people who actually are on the same path in pursuit. Because as much as people want to understand your journey, if they've never done it, they're just not going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for these people that are, unhappy, or I guess let me back up, one of the things I think I've noticed, and maybe this is just because of my involvement with it, and you probably can speak to this more, but it seems like with the internet, there's this explosion of the idea of entrepreneurship, the idea of you can work anywhere. You can work on a beach in Tahiti if you want, or you can work, from home or whatever. So there's kind of this glamorized view of, sticking it to the man and leaving with your goldfish and going with your computer and, working in Europe or on a beach or in your pajamas. But it's not for everybody. So how do you figure out if you are just unhappy with your job, or if you are really meant to go out and venture and do your own thing? How do you decipher between the two?
One of the things I said in my book is hating your job intensely is not a business plan. So it's a very, very different thing. What you want to separate out when you're thinking about that is, am I just really in the wrong position? Am I totally unhappy in this environment? And is my idea about wanting to go out on my own only glamorous, about the kinds of things we can hear about the flexibility that you can have when you work for yourself? It's amazing. In this last 5 years, but certainly the last 10 years, it blows my mind. It astounds me that you can have a business model like mine, where I'm here in Mesa, Arizona, which is my home base. I'm a mom. I have 2 little kids. I have clients all over the world that I talk to via Skype, that I lead virtual classes. That's amazing to me. So it's absolutely incredible that there are a lot of opportunities that the rise of the internet and social media and some tools like Skype, have really afforded us. But that said, those are just tools, and you still need to have a sound, viable business idea, much like you would have at the turn of the century when you were wanting to open some little shop. You need to understand, what do you offer? Is there a need in the market? Can you deliver that? Do you have all the appropriate resources? Do you know how to reach your clients? None of those things change, even when you have the ability to work from anywhere, because that's true. If you have a service-based business where maybe you're, sharing your knowledge as a consultant or something like that, it's true that you have a lot of flexibility, but it doesn't replace basic work that you will do to make sure that you have a business plan. And that's one of the things. I know I can sound old and grizzled sometimes when I'm sharing information on my blog, but having been in business for 16 years, having been a martial artist for a long time, I really do believe that you want to be slowly and carefully building up your competence. You want to recognize that it's not an easy journey. And anybody, I think, who's great in business, who doesn't just have momentary flash of success, but somebody who really has an enduring value that they're providing, is somebody who is taking the journey seriously. And while, of course, sometimes people are trying to sell you on the idea, you pay them in order, for them to tell you how easy it is to start a 6-figure business. There are things you can learn, but the reality is, for me, I wouldn't want to just have something instantly come to me. There's a joy of really figuring it out and building up a competence and a strength so that you know that it's not a fluke. Right. That it's very different getting 10 really good solid clients versus getting one that happens to fall in your lap. And that does not mean that you're going to have a sustainable business in the long run. Right.
No, you're absolutely right. It's funny, and it's easy to look back and say, I've been at this for, a couple of years now, or maybe if I'm really honest, longer than that, and there were times I was just really frustrated. But I think the frustration and the trauma from different parts of it has made me so much more appreciative and grateful for the place I'm at now. I think if I had, you talk about the Jerry Maguire moment, I can't tell you how many times I've thought about the Jerry Maguire moment and going, waiting for that pivotal moment that was going to push me over the edge, and I'm going to walk out in a blaze of glory and say, see you later. I mean, I was almost just like looking for that opportunity because I wanted out so badly. But I think that's, it's harder to work at it and just go plod along. And, and I guess the biggest thing is the knowing when to quit. I think that's the hardest thing, is finally making the decision and knowing when the right time is. So what do you tell people in terms of when is the right time? Is there a magic formula, or how do people know when they should leave?
Sorry, there's no magic formula.
Darn it.
I know. I wish I would be rich.
I know. Yes.
But there's no magic formula because each person is different. Each person has different financial needs. Each person has different risk tolerance. So there are a number of factors that you look for in order to see where you are. And I actually did a whole chapter on this because a lot of them are really important to look in detail. But having things like looking at your financial situation and knowing that you have a solid base where you have. Every financial expert that I interviewed said, at least 6 months, if not more, of your living expenses that you want to have in savings is generally a good idea. Now, some people choose not to do that, and that's okay because they have a higher risk tolerance. But you never want to start your business or quit when you don't actually know that you have income that's coming in. I think why doing things on the side is so much better. You want to make sure that you have the basic infrastructure in place. So you have a website, you have a way for people to pay you, you have clearly defined services, you have your marketing plan in place so that things are already rolling and you're not just making your entry into the market. People always underestimate the amount of time that it takes in order to really get sales flowing. And knowing that you work on small business marketing, it can be a frustrating thing when you're proud of what you have to offer and you make connections with people and things seem to be happening, but you're still not closing business. It's just because sales cycles are usually a lot longer than you think. And once things start to pop by being consistent, then it really turns around. But so you really want to make sure that you have your operations in place, that you have a clear idea of what you're doing, that you know who your market is, that you've done all of the things you need to do logistically to make sure you're complying with tax laws and business accounts and all those important things, just to make sure that you won't get in any trouble. And then at a certain point, it really is. It has to be an individual determination, and that's the risk part. Where I've had clients that have 3 years worth of savings in their account, 0 debt, everything totally paid off, are already working on a side plan, and still feel as terrified as somebody who has 2 weeks worth of savings, who is just ready to quit because they feel it's the right time. And that's what I mean about not being a magic formula. And I've seen things go both ways. Somebody who quits and everything just happens. That's how it was for me. From the moment that I started, I never was without work. I had a very successful business always. But there's a lot of factors, I think, are because of skills that I had and, being a connector and having a service that was always in need, no matter what was happening in the economy.
Right. I think that was one of the things for me, knowing that and needing to have that savings. And so I had this magic number that I felt like I needed to have. And I'll be honest, I didn't have it, when I left. But, a variety of factors between bandwidth. I mean, I think for me it was I couldn't do it anymore. And I think I'd gotten to a point where I could only grow so much and you call it a side hustle, but I was working my side hustle. But as hard as I worked that side hustle, there was only so much I could grow or do, with that limited amount of time. So it became, if I really want to make this happen, I've got to take the leap because I can't grow anymore. I can't do it to myself. I think there's that psychological and emotional aspect to it of, I was slowly just killing myself. I told my husband, one night I just came home and I said, I can't keep doing this. I cannot keep doing this. And I had said that many times before, you kind of have those moments, but that time I really meant it. I thought, we've got to have a escape plan or, it's over. I can't keep this up. So I think that's the hard thing, is to know there's kind of the pragmatic, side, there's the numbers, there's the plan, there's all of that stuff. But then there's the real emotional piece too, where you have to kind of go, okay, what do I need to do for my own well-being? How do I take care of myself in this process? So
it's so true. And the one thing I think is really important to note is that when you make the decision, it doesn't mean that for the rest of your life, if this goes wrong, then that's it. I mean, Laura, it's over for you.
Right.
There's never anything more.
Right.
There's so many different options that you have, and I always recommend people have some different plans in place. One of the reasons not to go out in the blaze of glory is because it's important to maintain integrity and connections when possible. Sometimes toxic environments are just such where you want to leave and never have contact, but in many ways, prior employers and connections you have can be a great source of referrals. And it's a great idea to just think about what would be the backup plan if it takes me longer than I think to get revenue. If something happens and I lose a couple contracts, then what else could I do?
Right.
And being creative about that and knowing that you're going to have so many opportunities and choice within your career in your lifetime to do different things. You may be like me and find that once you go independent, you never want to go back. Other people have a great time and do it for 5 years or something and then say, you know what, based on my life situation, I'm really ready and I want to go into an organization for a while. I think that is the new normal based on our economy. So that can sometimes cut some of the anxiety of saying everything has to be perfect if you have a backup plan.
Right.
And there is a risk at staying in a situation where you personally feel really terrible. It's been proven in a lot of studies, people get depressed, they get health issues, and at a certain point I always step back and think, you know, if I'm at the end of my life and really looking at what I've done, what decision am I going to regret less?
Right.
You know, if I look back and look at that period of time where I was going to quit, would I have encouraged myself to say, yeah, just do it? You know, it wasn't totally easy, but boy, was it worth it. And then, wow, look at the other directions that it propelled you. Right.
Well, it's funny in talking to people at my day job who are like, wow, you know, I mean, I think I came from an environment where this concept is so foreign. I mean, you know, I was working in government, and so, you know, and that's fine that, you know, people want to go and work for someone, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I was in an environment where this concept of entrepreneurship was entirely foreign, and so I had so many people going, wow, that's so brave, and wow, that's so courageous, or wow, I can't believe you're doing this. You're giving up your paycheck. What are you going to do? And I think some of it was self-reinforcement, but I told them, you know, I felt like if I didn't do it, I would always wonder what if was one of the things. But I also gave myself license. I said, you know, and I may fail miserably. I may decide I hate it. And if that happens, then I'll go get a job. You know, there's not to say that I can't, this is like my, you know, carving it in stone. I can never go back, you know. I told them that, you know, I'm willing to give it a shot. And if I go down in flames, that I can, you know, go find something else. And so I think I was kind of telling myself that and telling these people that, but which was really reassuring too, I think. So I think people sometimes feel it's now, or, you know, you can only choose one thing, kind of like choosing a college major. You pick it, you have to stay with that, you have to stay in this career your entire life. And I think we're starting to see now where people used to go and get a job and stay there for 30 years. And now there's so much more of this, you know, changing careers later in life or maybe multiple times. And that's okay. And I think, but a lot of people still don't understand that idea. It's still kind of new to some people.
Definitely. You're right. In certain sectors, that's the case. And certain people are more comfortable being in that situation. The one thing I'll say, it's not to be alarmist, but because I used to be a corporate consultant, I saw far too many times of people who thought that they were secure when they really weren't. And to me, that's actually a worse heartbreak because I can feel it when I think about the situations of somebody who truly was not prepared, who had no idea what they would do independently, whose only path was knowing that they'd be an employee. And in the current state of our economy, which again, I think is going to continue to be diversified, it's never going to be concentrated so much as it was in that security in the corporate side. That to me is the scary and the heartbreaking thing. So I think it's a fantastic skill to have, to know it, to know how to do it, to know how you can provide for yourself if you want to. And as you said, some people might find it's not for them in the long run.
Well, as my mother is a very wise person. She always says, be flexible or break. And I think there's so much truth in that, you know, and so you have to, and whatever it is, you have to be willing to be flexible. I mean, I'm really realizing that I've got this path, but I realize that I may end up, over here, and that's okay. It may take me in a different direction, and that's okay. I just have to be, willing and flexible to take that. One of the things, so you talk a lot about helping people make the leap, but what do you do? I know, and this is for my own benefit too, talking to people who've made the leap. What are some of the things that they encounter once they've quit, and what are some of the things you talk to people about that they struggle with after they've already made that jump?
One of the most surprising things is being prepared to feel a bit out of sorts when you do make the leap. And you've gone from a situation that is so stressful, from trying to pack everything into a day and feeling overwhelmed. When you do that, you tend to get very efficient. When all of a sudden you have a totally open schedule that you're driving yourself, that can freak people out sometimes. And so you have to figure out, what is your new normal? I do not believe that it is healthy or natural for the way we're wired as humans to be sitting down all day long from 9 to 5. That's not good for our health, and we see a lot of things that happen when people do that.
Right.
So a lot of people will do one of two things. They either completely lose control of their schedule and they end up not getting much done at all and feeling very out of sorts, or they end up just basically replicating what it is that they had in a corporate job and miss the opportunity sometimes to be building in more creativity or time for exercise or things like that. So one of the important things to realize is you need to really figure out what's a schedule that works for you, but you can start to get some kind of a pattern so that you get things done. Also, a very important thing is you no longer have somebody saying, here are your performance objectives for the year.
Right.
So you need to decide that, and you need to very regularly figure out, what are my goals this quarter, this month, this week? What are the main things I need to get done? And focus on doing that. It's not the time that you spend doing it, it's the results of doing it, which is often very different. You get paid really for, sometimes regardless of the results that you provide, you're always going to be getting the same paycheck. That is not true when you work for yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't get key things done, if you don't deliver projects to your clients, if you don't land new clients, you will not get paid. So you have to be very rigorous about knowing what it is that you're doing. And the other thing, which seems to be the mantra of the interview, is it can take time.
Yeah.
One of my mentors, Guy Kawasaki, who's a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, the author of a great book called The Art of the Start, which I recommend to anybody starting a business, wrote a post once about plant 100 flowers and watch what blooms. It's actually from Mao Zedong in China that saying comes from. But he talks about, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you have a product that you put out to market and you don't realize how people might choose to use it. That's very different from the way that you envisioned it. Sometimes you might go through and be making connections with people and you have no idea how those relationships can end up affecting your business in the long run. So on a very consistent basis, continually plant seeds. Always be looking to nurture your market. And sometimes if people get really busy at first with just serving clients or selling products, they forget that they need to continually be thinking about, what's my marketing plan? What's the need for somebody like you? How am I always building new seeds? And how can I mitigate risk? One of the, just a little simple rule that I always had for myself as a consultant is I always wanted to have at least 3 clients at one time, because I found over time that sometimes things change. One would go away, one would pay later. And if I had at least 3, it was fine. If I started to go down to any less than that, even if I had a really big contract, it would make me nervous because I knew that I was a little bit at risk. And so that's something that I would just start to get in that practice of making sure I had that kind of blend.
So for those people who are just at the very beginning of this going, okay, I want to make the jump. I have no idea where to start or what to do. What do you tell those people? What advice do you give them to help them figure out what their dream is or what their business is going to be? I know you talk, I think you've had classes and different things that talk about that. So how do you help those people who go, I know I want to own a business, I have no idea what it is yet? How do you help them?
Well, there is a process that you go through, and it's first really just finding out why. I really like to link to what is your view of your purpose for being on Earth. I think when you link your own business to a platform of really wanting to contribute something significant to the world throughout the course of your life, getting in touch with that. What is important to you? What change do you want to see? What special gifts do you have that you want to bring out in the world? That's a great, I call it your root. It's really your anchor of why it is that it's important to you. Making money is fantastic. I love it. It's not enough. It's not enough to sustain you through the tough times or to actually have a strong and resonant brand. So first you want to figure out, why are you here on earth? What do you really want to do? What do you want to contribute? And then you begin to look at what are all the possibilities. And there's a whole process you can go through in brainstorming, in noticing things that you've done in the past that you've really enjoyed, paying attention to what do you naturally light up around, not what you've really been often rewarded for in the past in a corporate life. Sometimes it's very different things that you forgot about that were important to you. I call it being a heat-guided missile, where you start to just pay attention to things that are of interest to you, collect the data, and then begin to do small tests to kind of check to see if there's a market involved. And then once you get that what you want to do, then you begin to get the very basic steps of how. How do you actually go through that process? Who do you want to work with? Begin to build the model. But early on, it's actually more of an internal process of figuring out what are the special list of ingredients that you have, what skills, strengths, competencies, interests, values, and then what in the market out there really needs those particular ingredients. And that's the starting place. I find a lot of people immediately go to, how could I just make money in the short term? And again, that can be great in the short term, but it doesn't create an enduring business. If that's really what you're after.
So you have those people, and then you also have the people who, have an idea of what they want to do. They've got, here's what I know I want to do, but I think a lot of business owners have a total aversion to selling. They don't want to turn into a used car salesman. It's like, I want to do X, but I don't want to have to go and find the business. I don't want to have to go and promote myself. I know you have a whole class about that, about ethical selling. So why do you think entrepreneurs are so scared of selling, and how do you help people overcome that fear?
I think it's because of a lot of the ways we've been socialized to think about what selling is. And I was reminded by my friend Bob Berg, who's a wonderful author that writes about selling as well, that he actually has a lot of car salesmen that follow his work, and there are some who are very competent and ethical people. Sometimes that industry gets an unfair rap, but I've been with people who are not the positive side of a car salesman, where the only objective is just to cram the sale down the customer's throat with total disregard to their needs and their interests. And so when you realize, depending upon how it is that you're wired, there are many different ways that you can connect with your customers. It goes back again to why. When you really understand you have something that's going to be of value to people, it's going to save them money, it's going to save them time, it's going to reduce their risk, it's going to do something positive that they want, and you can see that there are people who need it, it really starts out to be more a process of connecting with people and really understanding what they need. I don't believe ever in pushing yourself on somebody. It's having a conversation, understanding what's important to them, and then really clarifying what is the value in that, in them working with you, and then making it easy, some of the things you can do on the process side to make it easy to have the conversation. You understand the steps in the sales cycle. You know that if it does seem like a good fit, you're prepared to say, well, this is how I work with people.
Right.
Here's a description of my services. You can click on the pay button. And many times people don't have that, and then it becomes that really awkward conversation where they don't really know what to say.
Right.
So a lot of it is really linking, with what it is that's important to you and getting comfortable with a certain process in which you sell. If it's unfamiliar to you, that's where you want to learn. Yeah. And there's a lot of great books out there about selling where you can get a model that resonates with you and how you're wired as a person.
Right.
I was actually talking with Dan Pink, who's one of my favorite authors, who wrote A Whole New Mind and Drive, very well-known business author, and he was talking about selling and saying that it is absolutely, even in business culture, in business school, where you might have 85 marketing classes, you might have 2 classes about selling. And what do we need to actually get businesses going?
Right.
We need to have people understand how to make those transactions.
Right.
So there's a big societal bias against that. And the key is to find your own path where you really know that what you're doing is of value. To me, what always makes me feel better is thinking about clients that I've worked with. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know what? I feel like they are the ones that are behind me, where I know that I've helped them. They've made a positive change. They've actually made something happen that they're proud of. That's actually what I stand behind, and that gives me courage to keep going forward to get new clients.
I said this the other day with someone, and now it's kind of stuck in my head. And I think changing the word selling to solving. It's about solving a problem, and I think that kind of removes some of the ickiness of it. You know, you have a business to solve a problem, and people want their problem solved. So if you can do that, it kind of takes away some of this, I'm trying to sell you something. Instead, I'm trying to solve your problem. And I think that helps.
Did you get mad at Target when you're pushing your shopping cart down and you're purchasing toilet paper and milk? And I'm so glad that the store is there and it's organized in such a way that I can find what I need. I'm so happy to give them my money. It's fantastic.
Right. Like you're happy to give money to your tax guy to do your taxes, and you're happy to, you know, give your money to someone to mow your lawn, you know, or whatever it may be. And so, I mean, these are problems that you need solved. I was telling you earlier, I'm happy to have a place to send my dog to daycare so she can go and be tired. That solved a problem for me. So I think we're happy to give our money to people for those that can solve our problems. So. Yes. Well, Pam, this has been so super fun. I think this is a lot of great information, and I hope that there are folks that are watching this that are eager to be an entrepreneur, and hopefully this helps them, give them some ideas on what they need to do. And obviously, I'll put some links on the blog to check out your blog and your book, and I know you've got some courses and things. Any in particular that you've got that you want to tell people about? Any courses right now?
No, I think just if you come to Escape from Cubicle Nation, you can see real clearly I have 6 years of blog posts. I have a link to my book, so whatever it is that's relevant and useful, I really invite people to check out.
Absolutely. And like I said, and you do coaching. So, and I've worked with Pam, and I can attest that she's super, 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 super. So if you need some help and someone to talk things through, Pam can be really useful in that regard. So I really owe a lot to Pam. So anyway, thanks so much, Pam, for talking with everyone today. And her blog is escapefromcubiclenation.com. Go check it out.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.